Hi there, in this video we will solve problem set 5. So let's start with question number 1, which has 3 questions, sub-questions I should say. Now, starting with A, what is marginal product? Now, marginal product, MP, is equal to change in total product over change in variable input. Now, variable input in short run is usually labor. Yeah, it could be raw materials as well, but let's stick to labor as in the textbooks. Now, more specifically, basically, marginal product is the additional output when labor input increases by 1 unit. Yeah, that's the marginal product. Now, what does it mean if it is diminishing? Well, when it is diminishing, it means additional labor doesn't produce as much output as the previous additional labors, basically. Yeah, basically new additional. In other words, as we add more labor into production, the output of this additional labor will decline. Sorry, output of the additional units will decline. That's why you have the total product curve to look like this. Yeah, you see. Now, this is product. You can call it total product if you want. So amount of product, and this is labor. So notice this. If I add the first unit, so from 0 to 1, the first labor is added. This is how much that person basically produces. Let's say 10 units. I added now second person. Together, they made that much. Using, let's say, one single machine, 2 operators. Now I add a third person. And together, 3 people will make that much, basically. So this is, let's look at it. This is 17. Let's say this is, something like 20, 21. Notice this. The first unit actually from 0 to 1, this increase, added 10 units. Yeah, that's a huge jump, yeah, of output. When we added the second person, together these people then made 17 units. So this is the marginal product here. The difference between total products is the more marginal product with the next person. So that is 7 here. And this is 10. And when we added the third person, together they made 21 units. And the marginal product here is the difference between 21 and 17. And you can see that's 4. And notice what's happening here. The marginal products initially is 10, then 7, then 4. As you can see, as we add the 4th unit now, it's somewhere here, isn't it? So apologies. So it's going to bring it back. Note. Here it is. Now, as you can see now, this additional unit is basically giving us about 22 units, yeah? So together 4 people will make 22 units of output. So we're just holding the capital fixed in this case, and we're adding labor. Now, the marginal product of adding the 4th person is basically 1 extra unit. So marginal product is diminishing as a result. Yeah, this is what we call diminishing marginal products. Or when it diminishes, basically the additional units are producing not as much as fewer units than the previous additional units of labor. So yeah, so that's it. That's the answer to the first question. That's question A as well. Now, define total cost. Now, total cost is basically equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. Now, fixed costs are fixed. Let's say these are called usually period costs rather. Is a period just changes over time rather than as the output changes. Yeah. while variable costs change with output. The more you produce, the more will the variable costs be. But fixed costs are independent of output. Regardless of how many units you produce, fixed costs are usually fixed. So graphically, this is how they look. Fixed costs, let's say, this is quantity here, and this is cost. Fixed cost is just straight line no matter how many units you produce. As the units here, Q increases, cost is just fixed here at this, let's say, £10 per 1,000 batch. I'm sorry, just £10 regardless of the output level. Yeah, it could be 1 unit, it could be 10 units. Yeah, of output will stay the same. So it could be total fixed cost that includes insurance. Yeah, insurance of business insurance, let's say, rent. Yeah, regardless of what you produce and how many units you produce, it's basically fixed. Rent is fixed monthly. Landline rental, landline rental costs. Yeah, so the mobile phones, leasing of machines, so on and so forth. So these things don't, change. The cost of these items do not change with output. But with variable cost, it's different story, because variable costs of raw materials, as you produce, the total variable cost goes like this. It increases all the time. Total variable costs increase all the time. Now that's done. So that's done here. Average total cost. Well, average total cost is basically total cost over output. Yeah, it's just the cost per unit. Yeah, that's it, cost per unit. Now, marginal cost. What is a marginal cost? Right, so this is next one now. That's done. Marginal cost. Marginal cost is basically change in total cost over change in quantity. It's basically the cost of the next unit produced. Yeah, it's just the cost of the next unit produced. Right, how are they related? Now there's a relationship between, an interesting relationship between, I should say, average total cost and marginal cost. So that can be explained in a graph. And this is basically, this question is repeated in what follows as well. So as the quantities rise, we have costs on the axis. What happens is that this is the behavior of marginal cost usually. Looks like it's not that much. Maybe we start with the U-shaped average total cost. Yeah, this is the kind of average total cost. But marginal cost goes like this. Marginal cost. And notice what happens here. It crosses the average total cost curve right in the middle at the lowest point. This is the lowest point, let's say. Yeah, let's make it look like it. Yeah, this is the lowest point. Yeah, this is the bottom of the average total cost. So marginal cost cuts through the bottom of this average total cost, and marginal cost is usually below average total cost when average total cost is falling. Yeah, it's falling down. As you can see, it's decreasing. Yeah, but as soon as marginal cost cuts through the middle or bottom of the average total cost starts picking up. It starts increasing. So keep in mind this relationship. Yeah, but kind of maybe you would like to memorize it in a way. Yeah, for your test. So that's the kind of relationship between them, because marginal cost is just adding. It's just the cost of additional units, and each additional unit is just added to the total cost, and when you divide total cost by quantities produced, then you get the average total cost. So marginal cost is basically pulling the average total cost. Yeah, that's the relationship. Now, draw the marginal cost and average total cost for a typical firm. Explain why the curves have the shapes that they do and why they cross where they do. This is an interesting one, so it's links to the part B as well. Let's give ourselves some space here. quantity and cost. It's usually U-shaped here for average total cost, and marginal cost is kind of U-shaped, but you have this sort of J shape here, I should say. And this is also the minimum point of average total cost where they cross. Now, something we need to keep in mind is that, hopefully it's not confusing to you, the average total cost is U-shaped in the book, but Mankiw defines the marginal cost as a straight line. It's just, he is just ignoring this part, yeah, and defines this it as marginal cost as just a straight line cutting through the middle of or the bottom of the average total cost curve. So it's just something like this. This is how the book describes it, yeah. But generally, we should really be taking into account this part as well because of diminishing marginal products, yeah. Okay, let's go back to the question now. So draw the marginal cost, and let's go to firm, explain why the curves have the shapes that they do and why they cross where they do. Now, average total cost is U-shaped because initially costs are spread over many units, especially the fixed cost. As the quantities increase, let's put this, let's say what this is 100, this 2, not to the scale, obviously. The first unit's average total cost is x1 amount, but as we produce more, now total fixed cost that doesn't change usually. Remember the total cost? What was total cost? It was total fixed cost plus total variable cost. And now we know that this increases with quantity, but this doesn't. And excuse me, when you produce more, this can be spread over many units. So as a result, as we produce more and total fixed costs are spread over many units, the average total cost then, so average total cost, which is also the average fixed cost plus average variable cost, yeah, this is fixed, is declining now because now fixed costs are spread over many units. But at some point, notice this, the decline holds and it actually starts increasing. The total costs start increasing, average total costs or unit costs are increasing. That's because of diminishing margin products are now kicking in. In fact, they set in a little earlier and they pull up as a result the marginal cost pulls up because the additional units are costing even more to produce. What happens is that once the marginal cost cuts through the middle and then goes up and is above the marginal average total cost curve, is in this region, for example, yeah, then average total cost now will have to increase eventually, yeah. So the effect of fixed cost declining just diminishes now because, you know, if you spread the total fixed cost over many units, it just becomes very small amount now. Now, what determines from this point onwards is the behavior of the marginal cost, and it is determined by marginal cost behavior is affected by the diminishing margin products. Notice this, in the short run, this is short run, yeah, we're looking at, in the short run, we only have one capital usually, or fixed capital, but variable labor. And as we add more labor by fixing the capital at a point, we basically are creating a situation where the additional outputs produced from additional labor inputs will become less and less over time, and it will be costly, in other words. So each additional unit becomes costly. So the marginal cost now starting to increase as a result of costly production, yeah, because we only have one capital, many labor, and dividing the cost of labor, which is the wages, by the number of units, basically, it just tells you that this is shooting up now eventually, yeah. So as a result, ATC will start pulling up. Okay, so that's why they cross where they cross, and also they have these shapes, yeah. Now number 2 now, so we'll move on to number 2, if that's clear. Here the question number 2, if you remember, asked us to fill in this table. The blue values here, the blue cells basically, were the missing ones, but because this takes large amount, huge, a long time I should say, to do this manually, I decided to put the actual answers, typed answers. It's easier to give you the typed answers rather than manually entering them in this video, just to stretch the video instead of, and less effective just doing this manually. But I can explain still what is to be done to get these figures. Now let's read the question. So this is number 2A. Fill in the columns of total cost, variable cost, average fixed cost, and average total cost, and marginal cost. So what we are given here is anything that's in black font. This column is fully given, these are given, these are given, and these things here, and the output. Now when you produce 0 output, the total cost is 3 euros. And you might wonder why we actually have cost at all when we produce no output. That's because we have fixed costs included. This could be rent, could be any other expenditure. You see, firms do have to pay the rent, leasing, not wages, the wages of the CEOs, I should say, chief executive officers, those who are managerial level, but not the factory workers, because they're working if there's nothing produced. And as a result, this is 0. So there's nothing here. Basically, average fixed cost is basically fixed cost over output, so it's indeterminate. Average variable cost is basically variable cost over output, again nothing there. Average total cost is total cost over output, again output is 0, so there's nothing here. Marginal cost 0, obviously there's no production. Now as we produce this first unit, our variable cost is 0.3. Now notice this, because fixed costs are fixed over time or over different output levels, they're just £3. We just copy them across all these rows. Copy them. So that's fixed cost, total fixed cost at all levels. So it's just not changing whatever we produce, whatever amount we produce, it's just fixed. So total cost is then the sum of these two. So it's just plus everywhere. So that's 3.30. 3 plus 0.80 is 380, 450 done, and 650 is 3 plus 350. And this is just total cost here. Right, now average fixed cost is then, this is equal to basically, take the fixed cost, that's 3, so 3 over 1, that's because output is 1 and fixed cost is 3. And this comes from, again, note, again here, so this is basically £3 fixed cost over 2 units, so 150. Next one is £3 fixed cost over 3 units, and £3 fixed cost again over 4 units, and so on and so forth. Variable costs similarly, the 0.8 for 2 units over 2 units, that gives us this. This is basically 1 over, sorry, it's 150, isn't it now? 150 over 3, so 150 over 3, that's 0.5, or it's this value here, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that these are average variable costs, or variable cost per unit, in other words. And average total cost is then the sum of the two. Yeah, or so that's equal, or you just take the total cost divided by 3, and that gives us, is this the correct one? Yeah, so 150. Take 540 divided by 4, 135, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so there are two different ways of calculating it. Now marginal cost is the change, and remember marginal cost, so let's put this way. The marginal cost is the change in delta total cost over delta quantity. Alright, so in this case the marginal cost 0.30 comes from the change in total cost. So the change in total cost originally, so when we produce the first unit, basically, again something wrong with my note, OneNote. So this is basically this 0.30 is equal to change in total cost, that is 3.3, which is this value, minus 3, which is this value here, over 1 minus 0. That's this unit minus this unit, yeah? So I get now 3.3. Now this here, this 0.5, where does it come from? That's because, that's from changing production from 1 unit to 2 units, yeah? So that's, then total cost is 380 minus 330. Change in total cost, I should say. So 3.80 minus 3.30 over 2 minus 1. That gives us, excuse me, this value here. 0.5, and so on and so forth. So it's changing, and it's just marginal cost now. Yeah, we just applied that formula. Now moving on. Now B says draw the schedule of average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost. So I've got it drawn for you here. This is actually wrong. I don't know where this appears, but must have been an issue in my Excel spreadsheet when I plotted this variable. So this is basically the graph of this table with selected variables. Yeah, as you can see, average fixed cost, this is the average fixed cost. Notice what happens to it. As the number of units increase, it's actually gradually declining and approaching 0. It goes down as we, that makes sense, isn't it? Look at this. It's because fixed all the time. Look at this. It's fixed at any level of output. It's fixed 3 pounds. When we take per unit costs, or average costs, then average fixed costs, what happens is it goes down, as because we are spreading the 3 pound fixed cost over many more, additional units, extra units here, yeah, more output, I should say, yeah. So that's why it starts at 3 euros and it goes down to this many. And if you keep continuing, you would see that this goes on to 27, and so it goes on, and it approaches 0. With this decline, notice what happens. The total cost is also declining. The total cost is also declining. But now at some point it stops declining, because now the fixed cost, average fixed cost, is so low that it doesn't actually affect the behavior of this average total cost. So this is average total cost here. This is average fixed cost here. Now what happens is that the marginal cost is now plays an important role. It pulls now. So as it is increasing, after it crosses the bottom of the minimum point of average total cost, it now starts pulling average total cost, and as a result average total cost goes up like that as marginal cost goes up. Yeah. So this is gonna be the curve here if we were to continue. Right, so that's it. Oh, comment on the shape of the cost curves and relation. Okay, I've just done that actually, how they related. Yeah, average fixed cost curve determines the average total cost up to a point beyond which marginal cost actually pulls the average total cost. And then an AFC is average fixed cost. It looks like this. It just continues declines because of the fixed cost, total fixed cost being spread over many more units. Yeah. All right, so that's done. Now I had a quick break here. I was coughing for some reason today. All right, so this is our the third question here, question number 3. Now, how and why does a firm's average total cost curve differ in the short run and in the long run? Now, to understand this, we really need to throw them. This is the quantity. This is cost. Could be in pounds, yeah, could be in pounds. Or quantity could be in thousands of units. Notice in the short run, what happens is that, let's draw first short run curve. In the short run, capital is fixed. Could be a factory. Let's say that there is one factory in the short run. But we can add labor because it's variable capital. So this is fixed, but this is variable. Let's fix the capital as one factory, and labor can be added. More labor can be added. Yeah, we can employ more people. Now what happens is that if that's the case, with one factory we can expect our average total cost to behave like this. Short run average total cost curve. Yeah, or SRAC in some books. Yeah, this is equal to SRAC, short run average cost curve. So this is with one factory. This is when we have only one factory. So initially costs decline because of fixed costs being spread over many units, and because of additional units producing more, and then when you divide the costs by more units, it just reduces the average total cost. But at some point it starts increasing. Now firm at this point will think, okay, we need to build the next factory so that we can get even lower costs and employ more labor. So if they do so with two factories, now their costs maybe, so short run average cost may look like this with two factories. So they will have a even lower efficiency scale. Yeah. So this is the scale of production, 10,000 units. With now two factories, they can now produce so double the output, and per unit cost will also go down. Now at some point this long run problem becomes a short run problem, and with two factories they again run into diminishing marginal products, and as a result you have average costs increasing again. So they might open another factory. This might be the case now with three factories. Usually they're quite the same, but it's just like increase the size here. With the three factories, their cost starts at a high level, but it goes down over time with more production. So they could actually increase by 10,000 more units, with average total cost going down even further as they become larger now. They might want to open the new factory, or add the fourth factory. And with four factories, the short run problem again begins, and as you can see, they add extra labor, obviously that reduces now more production, obviously comes out of the factories now, but it also reduces the total average short run average cost. But notice that short run problem runs into another issue. There is not much now cost saving now, an issue of costs increasing back again as the fixed costs are spread thinly, and then diminishing marginal products kick in. what happens now is that firm might want to build now next, so this is 50, let's say. Firm might want to build the 5th factory now, but notice that with 5th factory, what happens is that costs a little higher now. Yeah, efficiency scale is not as low as before now. It's because it's a very large firm now. It's not that easy to manage, so they might actually add the next factory. Man, something's wrong with my node. So with the 6th factory, this might be the case, and 7th, this might be the case. Yeah. So the companies, as they get larger and larger, their costs shift upwards and downwards. Yeah. Now this is what happens in the short run average cost. And if we were to look at the long run case, then you should kind of connect the bottom parts where the efficiency scale is of all of these short run problems. This then gives us slightly flatter U-shaped curve. So in other words, if I just take the long run, so this is long run average cost curve. If I just to take that part of it, it looks like this. Long run average costs, quantity and costs being there, right? So it will have a longer bottom. It's a longer U-shaped curve, yeah, because of this such short run cost curves connected. Now that's it for question 3. I guess that doesn't have any more questions. Okay, question 4 now. Define economies of scale for A and define the, okay. Economies of scale arises when drawing is better here. This is an interesting one, so this cost. This is my average long run, by the way, long run average cost curve. Economies of scale arises when scale increases, when the scale increases. Now when we produce more output, average cost declines. Yeah, that's because of economies of scale. We are just saving more by producing large number of output. Yeah. Now, these economies of scale occurs long run average cost. So this part is the part economies of scale part. From this part onwards, when the average cost curve increases, this is where these economies of scale occur. In other words, we start firms, as they get larger, their average cost starts increasing. Yeah, average cost of production increases. So that's the case of these economies of scale. It's difficult to manage the larger firms compared to the small firms. So as we produce more, initially we grow, and we'll also reduce our average costs. But then at some point, or beyond some level or a size, additional scale increases basically do not give us any savings in costs. So this is, and then we'll face these economies of scale. Yeah, we will have to deal with these economies of scale. Right. So that's it. In other words, to make it a little clear, when economies of scale are achieved, the costs relative to the quantities decrease. In other words, quantities grow, or output grows faster than the total cost. As a result, average costs decline. But when we have these economies of scale, that's when the costs run faster, or they grow faster than the output. And when you divide the total cost by the quantities at each point, at each level of scale, I should say, we will have a higher average cost. Yeah, that's due to that causes the diseconomies of scale. Right. Question 5 now. The following is a list of various types of economies of scale. Yeah, and match each of the following examples for particular firm to one of these types of economies of scale. Right. So let's read this. The firm can benefit from the specialization and division of labor. Now, examples here. When basically larger firms usually can split the tasks, let's say of manufacturing. You can think of here, before we match it, let's look at this. Think of your local chicken and chip shop. Yeah, chicken and chip shop. If you go there, most likely you will see a single guy, one guy, doing everything. He's the cashier, he's the packaging guy, he's the one who is cooking or what you call this, frying, and he's also the one doing cleaning afterwards. Yeah, so the one guy trying to deal with everything. It's just the output will be lower as a result. Yeah, he's not able to produce as much. But if you go to McDonald's, you will most likely see several people. There's one person for cashier, till job. Second person will be dealing with cooking. Yeah. Third person will be dealing with serving. Yeah. The task is split among 3 people. As a result, McDonald's can serve more people per unit of time than the chip and chip shops, and they are large as well. Yeah, they are large enough to do that. Now, whenever this chicken and chip shop hires someone, they need to spend more time and resources to train this new person, to do everything. While McDonald's hiring someone new will have to just train that person either to do the cash thing or cook or serving. So it's cheaper for them. Yeah. So but as a result of being larger, they are able to save on training and other costs. Yeah. And it also increases their efficiency by splitting the labor tasks, between different people. So now let's match this I, or number 1, with an example here. So it can more easily make a public issue. No, workers spend less time, having to train for a wide variety of different tasks, and less time moving from task to task. So this is I. This is exactly the one that we're looking at. Yeah. Number 2, you can obtain inputs at lower prices. Well, large companies are able to negotiate because they require large amounts of inputs. So when you're buying a large amount of input, let's say an egg farmer could be selling egg to either, let's say, a corner shop guy or a Tesco guy. Farmers usually would like to sell to Tesco because they buy a lot of eggs, right? So with a lot of eggs being purchased, farmers will be willing to sell at low costs, while a corner shop guy would probably buy 1,000 boxes, maximum, but Tesco would buy hundreds or thousands of boxes every day, maybe, of eggs. So as a result, they are able to achieve lower prices, or lower input costs, Tesco's. So examples here. Okay, it looks like this one here. Actually, I was trying to locate my cursor because it disappeared, and in the end I just marked the line that corresponds to that second economies of scale case. Right, so it can negotiate bulk discounts with a supplier of raw materials. Okay, so large containers machines have a greater capacity to their surface area. Now, this is an interesting one. If a company is able to buy large or as a large capacity storage, then the company is able to store at low cost additional output, and they are able to use large warehouses. So the scale allows them to basically build these large warehouses. And the answer here that matches this economic scale case is it uses a large warehouse to store its raw materials and finished goods. So that's this one here. Number 3. Now compare this to a small store. Small store will have to hire small areas or spaces to store their food, their products. But then when they increase the capacity, they will have to hire additional space. Yeah, that costs additional amount. While large companies would have a large fixed capital, or warehouses, I should say, and this allows them to store at low cost. Now that's done. The firm may be able to obtain finance at low costs. I think I read this one. Okay, here it is. Large firms are able to negotiate low interest payments or issue the shares at low cost compared to small firms. So this is the one here. And number 5, it becomes economical to sell byproducts. That's an interesting. Think of a large producer, or let's say, oh, everything's gone for some reason. Not sure why. Okay, we'll stop this. Hopefully you copy it. So it becomes economical to sell byproducts. Okay, this is the answer here. In this case, a clothing manufacturer does a deal to supply a soft toy manufacturer with offcuts for stuffed toys. You see, if you have a clothing manufacturing business and you are small, then your offcuts are small amount as well. So no one would be interested in buying them. There's probably not enough for a toy manufacturer. But if you're large, obviously you produce more output, and as a result you have a large amount of offcuts that can be easily sold then to a buyer, yeah, toy manufacturer. So it's number 5. It basically gives extra revenue. Yeah, it results in extra revenue, and the cost then it will be lower because you are just utilizing every inch of that material. Yeah, this clothing. Then production can take place in integrated plants. If you're large, usually you would be using conveyor belts or some sort of manufacturing process that would move your products, automatically, or automatic process would move your raw materials or work in progress or work in process products from one section of the factory to another section. That actually then reduces the costs, because you're not basically hiring people to do this thing, or labor. Yeah, because that's expensive, right? But once you automate the process, then plant will have an integrated sections within the plant, and movements of products will be easier to take place. So that's number 6 here. Yeah, right. So that's done. Any questions? You can email me or attend my office hours.